And you watch, there have been so many major live service game failures when the standard becomes companies throw tens of millions of dollars at a game and then it vanishes. It becomes almost risky to get your heart invested in a modern game because it might be gone the next day.
Welcome to the Pixel Retentive Podcast, where we unpack the messy, beautiful intersection of creativity and business with the artists, marketers, and founders shaping our culture. Hey friends, I'm Carl, founder of Epic Made, and I'm the host of the Pixel Retentive Podcast, where we share our thoughts on creativity, art, and business. Past guests include Tim Thompson of RevThink, David Gallagher, transmedia storyteller spanning comics and gaming, and Mario Kroll of Uber Strategist. I'm forever grateful for the supporters of our podcast, and we are always open to more sponsors that align with our creativity. That said, Pixel Retentive is brought to you by the creative gurus at Epic Made. Epic Made is a creative studio that produces entertainment quality animation and illustration for brands that want to stand out in gaming, entertainment, and pop culture. We help companies tell stories that resonate with imaginative audiences and turn viewers into fandom. Whether your brand needs creative strategy, an exciting trailer, a fully animated series, or just some engaging motion graphics, we got you covered. Visit epicmade.net and let's collaborate on your next creative campaign. All right, so with us today, we have Cheryl Platz. Welcome to the show, Cheryl.
Thank you.
Really excited to have you. You have such a depth and wealth of experience and knowledge. This is going to be really fun. So, yeah.
We've so vibed on our introductory call. Like I've been looking forward to this for many weeks.
Oh, thanks, Cheryl. I love that. All right. So Cheryl Platz, founder of Idea Platz, LLC, author, strategist, and creative leader. Cheryl is a design leader whose hands-on work has impacted billions of people over the past 2 decades through technology, products you've either bought, played, or been influenced by directly. She's the author of the Game Development Strategy Guide and Design Beyond Devices, host of the Enduring Play podcast, and an adjunct at Carnegie Mellon, where she teaches what makes us play the craft of video games. What was that you just held up?
The book.
Oh, nice. Love it. Love it. Sorry, I'm obviously reading a script here. I can't memorize all this stuff. This is why I didn't get into acting. Anyways, Cheryl was recently named a Cannes Entertainment Lions for Gaming juror for 2026. She brings a rare combination of strategic thinking, creative leadership, and ethical perspective to the future of game development. Super pumped to have you. That is quite an amazing history of things you've done and accomplishments. And I was just scrolling through your LinkedIn the other day, and it's like you've worked at so many, like you're not exaggerating when you say you've impacted billions of people over the past 2 decades. That's literally incredible. So I'm just super pumped to have you on the show. So. Yeah,
it's funny. In some ways, coming back to gaming and doing this chapter, I don't know why, but it feels like I'm having like a coming out party. Like I've just had my head down doing the work for years, and now the games industry is on fire, and I'm really passionate about helping us rebuild it in a way that's sustainable. And part of doing that is kind of like telling my story. And I'm like, hey, everybody, I've been here for a while building the stuff that you don't hate, that you don't want to throw across the room. And that's why it's important that we talk about how to make games better.
I love this. I love this. I mean, yeah, and just high level, like just so people have a little bit of an understanding here. Like you've worked at Disney parks, you've worked at Carnegie Mellon, you've worked at Electric Arts, you've worked at Microsoft and look at Amazon and Microsoft again and Bill and Melinda Gates. Like this is like everything is just huge things. Riot Games, obviously, and now you're at Pokemon, which is amazing. And so the whole breadth of things, not to mention your podcast, all that stuff. So super pumped. But I would love for the audience to get to know you a little bit better here. So like I would love to know, like, based on you've had this wide ranging amazing experience, but like how long have you considered yourself to be in the industry, whatever that is, and what project are you most proud of so far?
Oh, fun questions. So it depends on how you define industry, right? So, I mean, I've been in technology since the beginning. At Carnegie Mellon, my undergrad was in computer science and human computer interaction. And the way I tell this story is, my senior year, the senior year job fair was a week after September 11th, right? So I trained as a computer scientist in the dot-com bubble, and then it burst as we were watching. And the job I had lined up at a design firm out in Pittsburgh, my design, was rescinded. So I feel for everybody going through things right now, right? Because it's the same things happened in 2001, right? Everything contracting, and nobody was hiring in that moment. And so in
Yeah.
that pivotal moment, I was like, well, okay, I could be unemployed, or I could go and continue to study. And so I applied to the Entertainment Technology Center at Carnegie Mellon, and and I got accepted, and that's how I ended up studying game design with Jesse Schell, and studying more location-based entertainment and things with Randy Pausch, who was a mentor and friend of mine over there, the late Randy Pausch of the last lecture. And so that's how I sort of ended up with these two sides of like the more traditional UX design, and then this like game design theme park stuff for the ETC. And that sort of set me up for this journey with these two sides. And my because of the way all of that went down, I at my I guess it was my second internship was at Disney Parks, and then my third internship was at Electronic Arts. But then I ran out of money for grad school, and so I converted to full time at Electronic Arts, and that's when I started in the games industry, like officially, right? Like, so that internship became the beginning of my games career. And I was
Ooh.
deeply lucky to be starting at Maxis, where The Sims was produced, right? So when we talk about the billions of players, we had a good head start there with the Sims franchise, because that was Sims 1 territory, and I also got to write for Sims 2. And I spent about 4 or 5 years doing video game development stuff, but there came a time where my studio got bought, and I had progressed far enough in my career that me being a lead producer woman was not matching what the industry wanted. Like, I was young and I was a woman, and they're like, I couldn't find jobs that were at my level. And so I went
Mm.
back to my original training, and I went to Microsoft and started working on server software. And my friends were like, you're crazy. I'm like, well, they're
Oh,
interesting problems though. They were like, I like solving interesting problems. They have a really big one. And System Center Configuration Manager, which I worked on for 4 or 5 years, was at the time before we had the cloud. It updated the operating systems on every like workplace computer in the world, basically, that was running
oh,
Windows. And so like those were big problems, like the Social Security Administration or like McDonald's, or like, how do we
yeah.
update all of our machines? I'm like, okay. And so that started my journey that eventually led to being like design lead for Azure, the web platform, and things like that. But there was a third chapter, which was consumer products, because I got to work on a Nintendo DS launch title back in my gaming days, which taught me how to work in constraint, taught me how to work on voice interaction, taught me how to work with touch before the
Mm.
iPhone was a thing. It really, and so that led to when me working on both Cortana and Alexa, that brought me to Amazon doing those things. And so those were like the three chapters, and like nesting dolls, right? And then I pulled back out of consumer products, went to servers, and then I put and IT, and that brought me to Gates Foundation, and then I got back out to games. But when I came back to games, it was as a UX director of the player platform for Riot Games, and I brought all of that IT goodness and like systems design and service design from the Gates Foundation. I brought all of that to Riot to help them do things like launch the Xbox Game Pass project for
Ooh.
all of their games in 6 months with no major issues at the holidays, like as the design lead, helping coordinate that across like a 300-person working group and across companies. I couldn't have done that without that weird winding path.
Yeah, which just makes you a total badass in the space, because that is amazing. And those things absolutely launched fantastic. I love Game Pass. Like, I kind of stopped buying a lot of games once I got Game Pass, and now that I can use it on my computer, like, it's interesting. So I mean, the industry is totally changing, and that's probably a great kind of segue. The console wars are like seemingly screeching to a stop, it feels like, and like, I don't know what that looks like. Nintendo's always had this leg up where it's like they keep innovating in a way that feels unique and amazing, but like, I don't really see an incentive to buy a console anymore, especially when so many of us have computers post COVID and then like the live streaming aspect of it. So I'd love to hear where your head's at around all of that because I know it's crazy out there. So
Yeah, it's a really deep conversation. And as a podcaster who's talking to a lot of folks, some really interesting themes are coming out. One thing we need to acknowledge is that consoles are actually getting more expensive instead of less expensive, which is
yep.
maybe the first time that's happened in the history of like the quote unquote console wars. The PS5, it just got more expensive. And full disclosure for folks, I do currently work at the Pokemon Company International, which is partially owned by Nintendo. And so I'm not speaking on their behalf at any time during this conversation. I just need to get that out of the way. But I have been a Nintendo fangirl my whole life. That's kind of how we got here to this point.
yeah.
I NES and working on the Nintendo DS and Game Boy games, shipping those. But what's been really interesting is, like, to your point, we all have consoles that do a lot. Like, not all, like the console gamers in this generation have consoles that are doing their thing. They're not Red Ring of Death. They're not failing. So like we've kind of all cast our lots there. The next generation is so expensive and there aren't hard drives available because of AI. So like that generation keeps kind of moving out into the distance. And then with PC gaming, there's this there's a really interesting turning point right now. And I don't know if I'm over indexing because I have nerd friends or not, but for there's this turning point against Windows for the first time.
Mm,
Windows has been really, and I worked at Microsoft for ages, and it was just like Windows gaming, right? Like it was just put your stuff on Windows and it works, but it doesn't just work anymore. And there's vulnerabilities, and there's Windows 11 kind of broke. Let's just put our cards on the table for a second, because I worked at
okay. Okay.
Microsoft on Windows 10 and Cortana was part of Windows 10, and at the time, the promise was you're never going to need another OS. And then Windows 11 came. And I was no longer at
Right.
Microsoft at the time. And I was like, wait, we told people we were done. What is this other thing? And it's not living up to the promises for people, and it's not as stable. And over here, Apple's rolling in with their standard laptops, and it's becoming easier to develop games on Mac. And then Steam OS is coming in, which is making it easier to develop Linux games. You're like, oh, the quote unquote PC market is really teetering on the brink of disruption. So I don't know what to say about that market, because for the first time in my whole career, I'm like, that is genuinely up for debate. Like, would it be overnight? No. But the thing is, influencers, the heart of influencers, really does control where the market goes, and they
Yeah.
seem to be open to change. The other thing I see in conversations is people are going out and buying vintage consoles. Like, I was doing a podcast for Carnegie Mellon students the other day, and one of them was like, she didn't have time to take my class, but she's like, I just bought I'm so excited to find out that you worked on Chronicles of Narnia for the Game Boy Advance. I just bought that game. And I was very confused because I shipped that game in 2005. I was like, surely you can't mean that game that I made. And she's like, no, I went out and bought a Game Boy, and I went and bought that game because it's one of my favorite games. And I'm like, oh, I'm deeply moved, first of all, because that's amazing. Second of all, it's not the first time this spring I've heard about people, like in episode 2, I was talking to Adana Ned, and she was talking about going out and getting handhelds, and because like the cartridges, just like the ownership model just feels more secure in this time when everything feels like it's falling apart. And I'm hearing that from a bunch of people, from students, from gamers. It's really interesting. There's this feeling of like shifting sands. Like you can't and if you think about it, if you take a step back and you watch, there have been so many major live service game failures. Conquered, one of the ones that comes to mind, but like there's one like a couple weeks ago. I don't even remember the name of it because they happen so fast. And
yeah.
when the standard becomes companies throw tens of millions of dollars at a game and then it vanishes, what like it becomes almost risky to get your heart invested in a modern game because it might be gone the next day. And then naturally that would drive people towards something that seems more it seems more reliable. And what's more reliable than a cartridge?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and in the digital world, like it's so weird. I saw as NFTs came up, I really liked this idea of like having digital assets. I was like, why isn't someone making a digital asset game library, that's blockchain backed that you can then, hey, like I bought this game, I own it, and I can then give it to my friend or rent it out or whatever. So I see people trying to do some of that stuff, but it's not the same as like I have a cartridge, CD is like, geez, that's funny to think about. We don't even use CDs anymore. I don't have a disk drive on the last two computers. Like it's,
I just
but
had
yeah,
a
it's
CD drive advertised to me by Instagram last night, and I was like, "Oh, I'm tagged in this post, and I think I need that." But we're not going to pack that. But let's talk about the NFT thing for a second. I never
okay.
want to say stuff like that, but because it's I've talked to people from who've worked in those spaces, and that line of thinking, right? It makes sense from the outside, like, well, why not just make these things non-fungible? Why not just have this ownership of the software? But where I found from the outside looking in, where that model kept falling down, was this assumption that capitalist companies are going to want to work together on something that they don't own that exists in the ether, right? There's like, I kept seeing companies being like, well, it's going to be great, we're going to create these objects and then you're going to use them in other games. I'm like, why is EA going to use this item? Like, why are they going to use this item why are they going to spend development resources to support this item that another company made money off of? Like,
Yeah.
let's just break the capitalism down for a second. And that's not a statement of good or bad. This is why the humans
Facts.
are doing the humaning in this current way. And so if you want that system to work, you got to get that big old giant to want to engage with that pile of stuff. Like, and so either the intrinsic value has to be there because there's a massive group of people, or this content has to be interesting enough, or something. But on its own, it's not going to be like, yay, thank you, you solved all our problems. It's actually like a
No.
bunch of risk and extra work, and like they have pipelines that don't require all of that extra extrinsic syncing. And it was just this, anytime I talk to people who are in this space, I was like, I tried to lead with curiosity, because like, maybe someone's got the killer app. I mean, I don't think they do, but there's all the rug pull scams and the stuff and the things and people trying to make
Yeah.
money. But like, maybe that thing exists. But it just kept being like, well, I'm going to put a pile of objects out there and then everybody's going to use them. Like, nope, that's not how that works. Sorry.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
and the same with like the owner. It's interesting with the ownership of games thing, because talking on my podcast this week, episode 10, with Desiree Rincon, she was third-party operations for Xbox, and told some really fascinating stories about manufacturing of discs and games and things like that. And I don't know why I didn't know this, but like, apparently like half of the discs manufactured today are blank. They just have product keys, and they're just
oh,
key discs. And so,
that makes sense.
they get to, you're like, oh, and when you think about how often games like Cyberpunk need massive patches at start, and when you hear her
Yes.
story about a wood chipper, you'll understand. Like, game companies get to the point where they're like, it's too much of an investment to like put it's too much legal risk to put code on these discs, so we're just going to put the key there. But the ownership model's been dead for ages when they're just shipping you keys, right? And what if the thing you own is fundamentally broken? Like,
Yeah.
that's the world we've lived in for a long time. As the games got so big, it like but when we shipped games that were 32 megabytes, a human group of people could, in a reasonable amount of time, QA that to the point where it was a
Oh yeah.
reasonable thing to own and not change. But like 100 gigabyte game, that is bananas. We have not figured that out. It is mathematically impossible to ship that without some problems, and we're just lucky if the problems are not critical. And so, yeah,
Right.
it's a little bit rambling, but like that connecting to the ownership thing, like the non-fungibility of it. Uh it's interesting, like, that the product key, there is a little bit of a connection to that NFT thing. Like, why are we shipping the
Yeah.
discs, etc.? But we're in a really weird place where ownership doesn't have value in a world where the thing we're shipping is fundamentally ephemeral.
Yeah. Yeah. I like, we're obviously in a massive disruption time, right? With lots of innovation and new technologies and AI and all this sort of stuff. And I think people didn't understand some of the sort of like I saw people not understand the use cases a lot for Web3. And now that AI is here, it's like you can clone stuff and code things so easily and just rip stuff off really fast and break a lot of these security protocols, especially the more dated ones, like almost effortlessly. And it's like the having things that are secured in an immutable record that's a license, I think, is very effective. But like you're right. Like there has to be the leverage and the value in the marketplace for the players to get involved, especially the big players. But what I think I'm seeing happen in the market, and what are my prediction, I think, for the next 5 or so years is, there's so much layoffs, so much uncertainty right now. We have like all, and in tech as well, not just video games
Yeah.
exclusively. So what I think is going to happen is there's all these really talented storytellers and creators and developers that are like in these weird spaces right now trying to figure out what the next step looks like. And it's like, hey, do they invest all of themselves to go get that next, AAA job? And like, oh, I'm excited. And then I get laid off again in a few months because whatever, right? So why I think the big companies are losing their leverage over individuals, over the talent. And if the talent starts to go, hey, well, I've been doing this for 20 years and I'm super smart and I have 10 other friends that know all the things that I don't, and we can leverage some of these new tools. Now we can put ourselves into a position that like we can develop our own games, we can develop our own movies, we can develop our own things using tools that allow us to 10x our output while still respecting our creative process and our ideas. I just think that there's a new wave coming in where there will be more incentive for decentralized communities to create things to align with each other. Like, hey, my friends made this game and we made this game. And like, what if we had interplayable assets? And then once there's a critical mass, then the bigger players are going to have to, the bigger, the Epic Games are going to be like, hey, maybe we need to do NFTs, allow some of our Fortnite skins to be used in some of these other games. And like, what does that look like? But yeah, the financial incentives have to be there. And if where the eyeballs are is where the money is, right? So who's got the attention? And right now it's the big companies. So,
And and there's so much to unpack here. And that's, I
for
think, why we
sure.
were vibing, because we started going into the future and talking about some really meaty concepts. One of the things that I run into all the time when I talk to people about AI adoption is also environmental impact. So anything you want to talk about Web3 at scale, you're going to have to figure out how to communicate to people. Is it proof of stake or proof of work? Like, but in a way that doesn't make people's brains melt, and
Yeah.
like make sure it's responsible. Because if people don't want to use AI because it's irresponsible, then like going back to Web3, they're going to throw the same thing at you, and rightly so, because like original Web3 was burning down forests just as much as
Yeah.
AI
Proof of
was.
work. Yeah.
But like there has to be a way. People who want to make this work are going to have to carry the burden of connecting that to consumers in a way that doesn't stress them out. And what you said is true, which is that there is this tipping point of decentralization of talent, because these companies aren't laying off in like a smart way. Like they're laying off in a very random expensive people way, which is like, why were they expensive? Because
Yeah.
they were, all of Marvel Studios. What? And so there's this really interesting uh um tension, I think, because to me, especially as someone who lives with a disability and sees what that does to my choices, and I'm,
Mm,
like I'm very blessed, right? But I've been in moments where it wasn't clear whether that was going to be true. And
mm,
like universal health care or universal basic income, suddenly that army of art, like laid off technologists and artists, goes from living like on the brink of despair to making our country a differentiator again, right?
yeah.
Because they're
Yeah.
unlocked to innovate, they're unlocked to collaborate, they can all do those things. I have many friends who want to go collaborate with each other, make their next projects, but like are having to just scrap and interview because they need healthcare to survive. we
Right.
have we have throttled and suppressed innovation in this country because healthcare is tied to employment at large companies. Like the system is built to fail in this way.
Yep.
And and so like when we talk about it this way, and it's like, well, this large company doesn't want this small innovation to happen this way. So the system supports them by requiring people to work there to get the health insurance. Like, well, How do we
Yeah.
fix that?
100%. And, not to go, I don't think we've ever gone down this rabbit hole, but like as you zoom out, and all these giant profitable companies that are in other holding companies that are owned by are all owned by the same companies. There's three or four investment companies that own 40% of the world's assets, right? So like these systems are all by design, right? But things, I saw Obamacare like really help. Like,
Mhm.
I have, if it wasn't for the healthcare marketplace, me and my whole team would not have health insurance at all. Is it great? No. Like, but is it better than nothing? Absolutely. So yeah, but you're absolutely right. If we get to a space where there's something, some sort of universal healthcare, some sort of, universal, income, would do nothing but explode the creative and innovation. Because if you don't, in Maslow's hierarchy of needs, if you don't have food, water, shelter, like you don't have time to be creative. Like I just need
No.
to eat. I'm desperate. Like I'm not gonna be like, oh well, what if I did this and did that and made some art? But that's the best part of humanity is like when we have the space to be creative and express ourselves and do the wild ideas, and that's where innovation explodes. And when America was healthiest was when we had the most robust middle class, when there wasn't this wealth income gap that was insane, right? And it's gotten really terrible over the past 50, 60 years. But previous to that, it was like really doing well. Like the first, 50, 60 years from the 1900s on, basically post World War II, the middle class got really strong here. That's when we had tremendous innovation and lots of stability and, the booming years of lots of the economy. And now it's like a little bit insane. So I'm totally with you on that. So what does this look like? If we have, like, what does the future look like in your mind as, all these layoffs are going on, people want to build games. What does ethical building look like? Maybe from a big company side, but also maybe an indie side.
Great questions. So, a lot of the themes in my podcast are around sustainable game development, right? So, first of all, you do not have to crunch to make games. Full stop. Like that, I left Electronic Arts in 2005 because, or 2004 it was because there was this thing, this blow up, EA spouse. Someone posted to LiveJournal saying, "I have lost my husband to the Lord of the Rings team at EA." And it was wild. And they were describing things that were also happening on my team across the hallway.
Yeah.
I loved working on The Sims, but it had got to the point where I was like, I'm going to quit my dream job because I feel compelled to run game teams to show that you don't have to burn people to do it. And what was
Mm.
really interesting is on episode 9 of my podcast, season 2, with Corey Jung, who was on Sims 1 and then like all the Sims games and then went to, many of the early Sims games and then went to Elder Scrolls Online. Same journey, right? Like experienced a lot of the burnout and then learned techniques to address it. One of the great stories is like when he was asked to intervene and help address crunch on one of the project didn't crunch, and that was the project where he managed to keep his girlfriend and marry them and marry her, and now they've been together for like, okay, see, you can ship games without crunch and look what it does to human beings. It's really great when you don't do that. And so much about not crunching in video games is first accepting what makes video game development different than other parts of tech, other parts of film. Like video games are not film and they are not cloud services. They are both.
Yep.
And so you have all of the risk of a cloud service and all of the uncertainty of trying to align 300 people on a creative vision. And so, yes, they are
And
hard.
launch dates. Like,
Yeah.
yeah. So
And
yeah.
so you have to accept that it is harder than both of those things. And if you try to make it either one of those things, you are already setting yourself up for failure. And we see that a lot in the industry. Then the next thing that I think the industry hasn't really wrestled with is if you're making a live service game, you are making something that you want to thrive for multiple years. So you have to build systems at launch. You can't wait to see if it's successful, because that's what keeps happening is people are like, I'm just going to build a thing, and then if people like it, I'll build the systems. Like, nope, too late. You have to build your
Ah,
economy. You have to build a like an economic model that pays to keep your lights on long enough for you to like get everything else running. The games
yep.
like Helldivers 2 that have adopted a mixed mental economic model that charge up front, but not maybe at like a $70 price point, but enough to like pay for the servers, and then
Yeah.
do microtransactions for the people who are really hype about it. That is a sweet spot that
Yep.
is responsible and keeps the game going long enough that people don't feel like they've been rug pulled. There's this responsibility of like accepting, if you are shipping a live service game, you need to really do the math on how you support your big company ambitions and
Mm.
keep the lights on. And the thing about it is, I don't know why, but game developers like have this allergic reaction to talking about money and monetization. And I'm like, oh boy. But then you get really upset when we have layoffs. And look, I don't love it. I'm creative. I love, like, the thing I love about Pokemon is Pikachu, and like like the cool RPG elements, and like the fact that it's a transmedia property, right?
Yep.
But what I tell my students is like we need to have a like a an objective way to talk about video game monetization so that we can understand what we like, what we don't like, and how to move the needle, right? A lot of people know that they don't like pay to play or pay to win, but what does that
Right.
mean? And how do you move something away from it? Like, that's just having anger about it is not useful. We need to, like, okay, sit down with it. What parts of it are that? How, okay, what would you do instead? Because you do still have to pay for the servers. Someone still has to pay for the salaries. I had someone at GDC come to me and be like, what what do you have to say about the unethical nature of subscriptions? So I was like, okay, let's back this up a second. Like,
Yeah. What?
I love your energy, but like, did anyone ever walk up to a newspaper subscription and tell it was unethical? Like, it's not the
Right.
subscription that is unethical. Now, are subscriptions abused? Yes. Do people put dark patterns in place so that people can't get out of subscriptions? Is that a problem? Yes. Do people
Yes.
give people crappy subscriptions that don't give you value? Yes. But that's the subscription is not the unethical part. It's the way the tool is used that's unethical.
It is
And
always how the tool is wielded.
yeah,
Always.
right.
For
And
sure.
like this is the way that, and so like I really need the industry. Part of why we keep falling is we are not having the nuanced conversations, and we keep being like,
Mm.
I don't want subscriptions, and we just push an entirely valid category of monetization out the window. I don't like microtransactions. We push an entirely valid category of monetization out the window, and suddenly there's nothing left. But we also don't like paying $70 for games. I'm like, how did you think we were going to pay for like the lights and
Yeah.
the healthcare? Like, it has to happen somehow. And so, like, let's get in there and talk about like I have had the experience, and I won't mention like which specific game. I have had the experience of shipping games that are free, and people are mad at me for not charging for them. Like, players do want to exchange money for valuable services. It's not inherently unethical, because they want to like they want your game to continue, but they want it to be a good value proposition. They want it to feel like fair. They want it to feel joyful. And so if you go in there and you get nuanced about it, you're like, hey, this group of players really loves self-expression, so we're going to give them a lot of like cosmetic skins and stuff. That's how you get League of Legends. League of Legends is basically funded entirely by the motivator of play that I discuss in my book, of self-expression. And people
Right.
who don't play League of Legends sleep on that. They're like, oh, I don't, like, it's wild when you dig into it. You're like, that is a whole competitive game that is motivated by people wanting their avatars to look great,
Same thing as Fortnite, right? Like they
right?
have us like it's all skin driven. Like they told them that that model would never work, and they make a shit ton of money. So
And
yeah.
that's one of the reasons I wrote the book, was because it didn't surprise me when I found it out, but it surprised me that it surprised other people. And I realized, like,
Mm.
oh, I worked on The Sims in the early aughts. I've seen this from the beginning, and I
Yep.
didn't realize what a front row seat I've had since the very start. So I've been like, self expressions of like a total motivator play, like, obviously, because like the first thing they asked me to do at Maxis was go on the internet, scour the internet, and research all the fan sites that were building objects for The Sims. So it's been built into my gamer DNA from the beginning. And like
Mm.
watching people struggle to come back to, is like, oh, I need to help people with this, because it's not. And then the data. so I put my motivators to play together for my class, and then it was resonating. So I sort of put the book together. I'm like, I'm going to go challenge myself. I'm going to go look for the data because maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this is just my perception. Maybe it's just a couple games. The data, it like supports that so much, and like self-expression just keeps like bouncing up the charts. It's in a world where a generation of gamers was forged in Roblox and Minecraft, and that's not just something they like, it's something they expect. And
Yeah.
that is hugely disruptive for the generation of game developers that are my age, because they don't they keep trying to make us one fixed game, like with one fixed storyline, and fling it at people, and and also it's probably a competitive mastery based game, and they fling that same game at people, and they're surprised that the same 5 people are the ones that show up at the front door.
100% up. So lots of feedback and thoughts on that. Absolutely. First of all, like there's so much passion in gaming, and people are passionate about making them and playing them. And like when you start to combine passion and money, people get weird sometimes. It just is what it is. So they're mad at you for free. They're mad at you for this. And they'll be mad at anything because the problem is they're mad at society, and it's too fucking hard. And like, you know, there's like the middle class again is just getting squeezed to death. But like I remember buying Nintendo games for $60. Like, and $60 has been the standard for I don't
Since
know
the
how long.
80s.
And money, $60 is worth like $10 these days, relatively speaking. You know what I mean? Since the '80s, like not to mention just pre-COVID, $60 to now is like you know $30. Like it's like half the money. Um, you know, then you have this idea that like people like you that were you and I were deeply steeped in gaming culture our whole lives. Like I ran like a raiding guild in EverQuest 1 on my 56K dial up through my high school
Yeah,
experiences.
modems.
Yeah, I was like, hey, you can't call me. I'm patching this game for 14 hours. My mom loved that. But I remember like these really, really giving a shit about how my character looked in the game. I spent dozens and dozens and dozens of hours randomly forging little assets in like different zones in EverQuest so that I could have a chance at crafting a unique cultural piece of armor that was blue like this. It was Mithril Elven chainmail, right? And I wanted a full set of Mithril Elven chainmail for my Wood Elf Druid. And I can't tell you how many hours of my life I spent just making sure that I was the coolest, dopest looking Druid on the entire server that had this cyan blue ringmail armor, and druids could only normally wear like leather armor. But like it goes to this digital identity, right? And people like you and I got that. Like you did a lot of stuff with The Sims and all that. So I'm sure you have other experiences on top of that. But everyone else got it in COVID. Everyone else got it when like your whole identity now is like you're in sweatpants and a t-shirt at your house, but you like how do you put yourself on the internet, right? And that also fueled the entire NFT economy. That whole NFT boom was like, hey, I had this NFT icon, like I own these things. It's part of my digital identity, and that blew up into the metaverse, and that became a thing. And then Zuckerberg rebrands his whole business to metaverse because he wants to be cool, and I don't think that worked out for him as well as he'd hoped, but you know, and not too much shade
Authenticity
there,
still
but
matters.
yeah, yeah, it does matter, right? And also, they banned all my shit recently, and I can't get a hold of anybody. I have 20 years of Facebook stuff. They banned my MetaQuest account back into ownership. Like someone hacked my Facebook account, got my account banned, appealed it, and got perma banned. Right. And there's literally no resource for me to contact anybody. Whenever I create an email and in any way use my name, they just ban the account again, which is insane. And like I lost all my Quest games. Like I like
So
$700 of
sorry.
I can't play with my kid anymore on our Quest. Like, and there's no customer service. So it's just ridiculous. So that's all sidebar. But so yeah, that whole thing there, this idea that people really care how they come across on the internet is absolutely as much as you care what you look like when you put on your your costume of the day to go out in the world. People also care what they come across like on the internet. It's part of our identities now. We have digital identities. So that was my whole that
No,
was
I
the whole
love
thing.
the
I think.
story of the elven armor. Like it's so specific and evocative and emotional, and like it's and those are the stories we need, right? Like we need the human people's specific lived human stories now in a world of AI generated stuff. Like we need people to talk about their specific lived experiences more and more and more. Like one of the conversations I was having on my podcast was about this emergent specialty in gaming, cultural technical design, which is like making like figuring out how cultural influences can shape the actual gameplay. And I'm like, yeah, yeah,
Mm.
yeah, yeah. Like they tell unique stories. That's what we need right now. And that it's back to the original point, right? Like when you get those, if we find a way to set these gamers who have been these game developers who have been laid off, if we find a way to set them financially free to collaborate and tell unique specific stories, uh, there can be a renaissance. There can be something beautiful, but we do have to find a way to lift them up because the money isn't there right now.
Yeah, and I don't know what the solution to that is. But there's something out there, and it's really like I don't know. Like I think about how much time everyone spends on their phones and like all that money that attention and advertising and all that goes to like, four companies. And it's like, how does that get, there might be something in there, right? Like should, Facebook and Google and, now some of these AI companies be the only ones making, most of this money. And I think that was the dream of Web3, right? That like the dream was there was going to be a decentralization and a more democratization of like how we use the internet. And it hasn't manifested yet entirely, but like there's little pockets out there. So
Yeah.
and again, I know we talked a bit about the I love Web3. I know I keep bringing it up, but the energy consumption issues and there's so much into the nuance and details of that, but like all of it pales in comparison to us starting wars for no reason and blowing up all kinds of shit and like we get all this flack gets thrown at things that like could possibly help people. Meanwhile, it's like, oh well, let's just not pay attention to like the things that are like 10x problems everywhere else. It's just interesting for me. So it's like
Yeah,
distraction, on purpose kind of stuff.
it is well,
Anyways.
unimaginably difficult right now. I
Mm.
mean, there are other generations who have lived through this level of difficulty, I think, but none of us wanted to get back here.
No, definitely not. And it's like we've seen some shit. Like I started my company in 2006, in the same vibe. Like we couldn't get jobs. Like the shit just was everything was but like shutting down. My wife had an open job offer that got rescinded right before we graduated college, and so we've had to like be scrappy and figure it out. So like I've always had this like yeah whatever. I'll always like I have a weird like it just whenever it feels dark it's like I don't know how we're going to get through this, but like it always works out. Like it always works out and I just keep moving forward. So it's an interesting space to be in for everybody, but if you're out there and you're struggling, just know like the opportunities come. Just keep showing up and doing the best you can. Keep digesting content, keep networking, keep building relationships. Like and you never know what things will come out, what opportunities are there. And I'd love to see more indie game studios blow up and do some really cool things, that just where people strap some things together out of necessity, and what cool things come from there. Like necessity itself is the mother of innovation, as they say. So
Well, and there's something deep in what you're saying, and it goes through the whole season 2 of my podcast, which is that you build your communities before you need them. Like that was a
yes.
big lesson for me when like the layoff I experienced at Riot was my first layoff of my career, and I was deeply blessed that like I had been engaging with community beforehand, and so my community like caught me, helped me, like I saw them lifting me up in the moment like moments after my layoff announcement happened, and I've been reflecting on that ever since. Like, how do I pay that forward again? But also, like, how do I kind of like help other people understand, like, me finding another job weeks after getting laid off from Riot was not luck. It was not. It was me spending years out in the circuit, networking, building relationships when I didn't need them, building trust, putting value in the system, banking it so that like when I needed to, I could pull back. Like, and we need each other because the system does not have our backs. And so like I curated everybody in this season of my podcast because I wanted them both to share their expertise in gaming, but to show that they were also engaging with the community. Like that you can do both, that you can, like, whether it is an identity based community like Latinx in gaming, or whether it's like a local based community like Seattle indies, or whether it's like education like DigiPen or USC, or what, like, there's, or whether it's like supporting veterans like Gold Star Gamers, and there's something out there to find people even in the dark moments when you don't have that, there's something out there where you can continue to engage, you can find your people. And that's the valuable networking. It's not like fire a cold email to somebody on LinkedIn and be like, get me a job. It's like, find your people, build your coalition, chase your passion, and then those are the people that you will just find yourself continuing to work it out with over and over and
Mm.
over again, and you will build momentum like a snowball. But the first step is to find your community, and if you can't find it, build it. And that act of building will probably be the thing that carries you through the darkest moments.
I love that. I think that's a beautiful place to wrap into our last question here. This conversation went exceedingly fast, as I expected. But yeah, so Cheryl, you've shared some really great insights and some great things here. But I'm just wondering, is there anything else in your career that you'd like to shout out to the audience that they might have some value, maybe a mentor, valuable resource, or favorite client?
Well, one person I don't get to talk about terribly much who definitely had a massive impact on my career is Virginia MacArthur. Virginia was my second manager at Electronic Arts. I switched teams from the Sims 1 team over to the console team. And, Virginia took a chance on me because I was at a situation where I couldn't continue on grad school because I was getting denied for loans. And we don't have time to unpack, like, why are we not approving people for the entirety of the loans they're going to need for a program? But okay, fine.
Right.
But Virginia brought me onto her team that was producing the Game Boy version of Sims Bustin' Out, and Virginia's trust in my abilities and sort of giving me space to just kind of exceed expectations all the time gave me an insanely valuable end-to-end education on game production. Like, I touched everything from pitches to like the final approval on builds to go to manufacturing, lot check, all of it, right? Like, I was on the phone with the ESRB. I am like on the front lines at like giving demos to MTV. Like, I am like I'm on the floor at E3. Virginia had faith in me and gave me the space to explore. Like, she never questioned my potential. And it
Mm.
was, one thing I tell a lot of people when they do run into people who do question their potential is like, other people's perception does not change your potential, right? It might slow you down, but I never had that problem with Virginia. Like, Virginia, like, just was like, you have the pit, you can do this, you can do this, like that, like, you have it in you. She's probably saw more in me than I did, but and I'm grateful to her for that support because I went so far so fast because she gave me exposure to just the whole game development process. And the fact that my book looks at things from a holistic perspective is largely because of that. And then when I had that desire to go lead teams, she was supportive of like, go fly free, go to the studio, go do the thing. And so
Yeah.
we didn't get to work together for like a tremendously long time, but like, I am deeply grateful for the time we did get to spend together.
And that is beautiful. I love that. And there needs to be more people in the world that do that. And I think another important note in that is that someone gave you an opportunity that maybe you hadn't like earned yet because it was still potential. And then you showed up 100% and proved that you were the right place to, take that gamble. And that's really important. So just, everyone should be, if you get opportunities, swing hard, like, and just put your whole effort into it. And you never know where that can take you. So I love it. All right. Well, and I wanted to shout out LinkedIn, the wonderful place to network and collaborate with people, because that's where we met. And random DMs are annoying for people. We're all there. We all get hundreds of them. But if you do it in a way that's like funny and lighthearted and actually like brings value to people, like, you can bring up nice relationships, like me and Cheryl. So, example of like ways to do things that are cool. Anyhow, were you to say something?
Oh no, I agree wholeheartedly on the LinkedIn thing. Like, we talk about LinkedIn a lot on the podcast because there's a lot of people who've been laid off, and when people get laid off, and often one of my first questions is, how's your LinkedIn? And many of them, like, I haven't updated it in years and I don't like it. I'm like, I'm so sorry. I you can choose to be a conscientious objector, but I'm gonna advise that you get on it. And one of the things I talk about is like, hey, if your company lays you off and you have access to like a Randstad or somebody who's going to help you rewrite your presence, take it. I don't care how good you think your profile is, because I took that. even though I was active in LinkedIn. And I'm pretty sure that helped me get a dream job offer months after landing a different job the year I got laid off. Like, that's like, be humble, get the help. Like, you never know where it's going to take you. But then the other point there is, that the way you connected, right? Like, come in, connect as a human. Like, and one tip I'm going to give people that I don't always say is, like, if you're going to connect with someone on LinkedIn, go check their stuff first. Like, don't
Yeah.
just like look at their title and say like, hey, I like your job. Like, go look, if they're putting content out there, take the time to review some of it and like reach out with a thing you liked about their content. Show that you have put in some time and you are actually invested in their existence as a human being and are not just a bot that has scraped their name. That's what it
Yep.
takes right now. But you sent a lovely email and it, like, connected to me, and that's how we got there. So LinkedIn has a lot of value. My LinkedIn inbox is the wildest ride in the wilderness. Like 2 weeks ago, I got an invitation to be a juror at Cannes. So like the wild stuff can happen if you engage, but you need to do
that
it
is
with
awesome.
authenticity and humility at times, but also like just showing up as your full human self.
Love that. Thank you for that extra bit of value there. So we've been talking with Cheryl Platz here. You can check her out at her website at CherylPlatz.com. That's CherylPlatz.com. Or you can go to GameDevelopmentStrategyGuide.com. But if listeners want to follow up with you directly, where should they go? What's the best place?
Well, I'm very active on socials. So Blue Sky and Instagram, I'm Funny Godmother. So you can find me there. There's also Idea Platz on both of those, on both Blue Sky and Instagram and YouTube. And of course, I'm on LinkedIn as well. I don't accept every LinkedIn invitation I get because I get a lot of them. Like I will engage with messages if they're well written, but I have a high standard for accepting invitations. But I do engage a lot with the comments, and so that's how I recommend people, if you want to engage with me, and start engaging with the posts, start having conversations, because that's how I build a lot of my relationships. Is you build trust over time.
Love that. That's absolutely the best strategy for sure. All right, Cheryl. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. And if you all enjoyed this episode and it sparked something for you, please share it with a friend or colleague. And we will see you all next time.
Thank you so much, Carl. This is great. Bye.
We really hope you enjoyed the show. Please like and subscribe to join us on our next journey through the world of art and business on the Pixel Retentive Podcast.